The night my husband left me crying in the rain was the night I accidentally got into a car with the most dangerous man in the city. And it turned out to be the best mistake I ever made. The storm outside mirrored the chaos inside my heart. I pressed my back against the cold brick wall of St. Mary's Children's Hospital, the December wind cutting through my scrubs like knives. Rain hammered the city like bullets from an angry sky, each drop a reminder of how quickly my life had unraveled. In just 30 minutes before we begin, if you believe love can be both salvation and destruction, make sure to subscribe. It's free and it helps us share more stories from Desire Tales. My hands still trembled from the adrenaline of saving little Tommy Martinez. The 8-year-old had coded twice during his emergency appendectomy, and I had spent 4 straight hours holding his tiny hand while machines fought to keep him breathing. Another double shift. Another child pulled back from the edge. Another day David would call meaningless because it didn't pay enough to matter. Isabella, you need to understand priorities. His voice still echoed in my head, sharp and condescending even through the roar of the rain. We can't afford your savior complex anymore. He had told me that morning. I got an offer today, a real job. But it means we need to start thinking about our future. About having kids. Kids. The word alone made my chest tighten with panic. At 28, I should have been ready. Most women my age were already mothers, gracefully balancing work and family. But whenever David brought up children, all I could see was my father walking out the door when I was 7, leaving behind only empty promises and a mother who never recovered. I'm not ready, David. You know why. Your daddy issues aren't my problem anymore, Isabella. Either you grow up and give me what I want, or I'll find someone who will. The argument had escalated fast, our voices rising until the other staff started staring. David grabbed my arm, his fingers digging into the flesh above my elbow hard enough to leave bruises. Maybe standing in the rain for a while will teach you to appreciate what you have at home. And then he was gone, tires squealing as his rusted Honda disappeared from the hospital parking garage, leaving me stranded 20 meters from our apartment with nothing but my purse and the thin scrubs clinging to my freezing skin. I fumbled for my phone, my fingers numb as I tried to call an Uber. The screen flickered once, twice, then went black. Dead battery. Damn it, I whispered, shoving the useless device back into my pocket. The garage was nearly empty now, silent except for the echo of rainwater dripping through cracks in the concrete ceiling. I could have gone back inside, asked for help, but the humiliation of admitting that my husband had abandoned me felt worse than freezing to death. That's when I saw it. A sleek black sedan idled near the exit ramp, its hazard lights blinking in a steady rhythm, like a heartbeat pulsing through the darkness. Through the rain-streaked windshield, I could just make out the outline of someone in the driver's seat. Why Uber? It had to be. The timing was too perfect to be anything else. I ran toward the car, heels clicking against wet pavement, my nurse's bag bouncing against my hip. The rear passenger door was unlocked. I slid inside with a gasp of relief, grateful to escape the storm, even if it was only for the ride home. Thank God, I breathed, wiping the rain from my face with the back of my hand. I thought you'd canceled when I didn't answer my phone. The battery died and my husband. Where the hell did you come from? The voice that interrupted me was nothing like I expected from an Uber driver. It was deep, cultured, rich as dark chocolate and twice as dangerous, with an accent I couldn't quite place. Italian, maybe. I looked up, and the world seemed to tilt beneath me. The man in the back seat wasn't a driver at all. He was pressed against the far window, one hand clutching his side where something dark spread across the white fabric of his shirt. Blood. Even in the dim light from the dashboard, I could see the sharp, aristocratic angles of his face, the way shadows carved his cheekbones and jaw. His hair, black as the storm outside, was slicked back from a high forehead that spoke of intelligence and ruthlessness in equal measure, and his eyes. God, his eyes. They were the color of a winter sky just before a blizzard, pale gray blue, so intense they seemed to look straight through me to places I'd forgotten existed. "I'm sorry," I stammered, already reaching for the door handle. "I thought this was my ride. I'll just..." "Stay still." The command was quiet but absolute. "Marcus, drive." Only then did I notice the man behind the wheel, a silent driver who nodded once and pulled the car smoothly away from the curb. Trapped between politeness and panic, I sat frozen, unsure whether I was being kidnapped or caught in a case of mistaken identity. "Please, I really need to get out. This is just a misunderstanding." The wounded stranger studied me with those glacial eyes, taking in everything: my soaked scrubs, my trembling hands, the way I pressed against the door like a cornered animal. "Who left you out there?" he asked. The question was so unexpected that I answered before thinking. "My husband. He was teaching me a lesson." Something dangerous flickered in his gaze. "What kind of lesson requires leaving a woman alone in a storm?" I wrapped my arms around myself, shivering. "The kind that shows me what I have to lose if I don't give him what he wants." "And what does he want?" "Children. A family. Things I'm not ready to give him." The words spilled out, raw and unguarded. 3 years of marriage counseling and buried resentment flowing like blood from a wound. "He thinks I'm broken because I won't just snap my fingers and become the perfect wife." The man was silent for a long moment, still watching me with unnerving intensity. When he spoke again, his tone softened but lost none of its authority. "Some lessons are more dangerous than others, Isabella." My blood froze. "How do you know my name?" He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he shifted slightly, and I caught a glimpse of a gun holstered beneath his jacket. The dark stain on his shirt was definitely blood, and from the way he held himself, the wound was serious. "You're hurt," I said, my medical instincts overriding my fear. "You need to get to a hospital." "No hospitals." "But you're bleeding." I said, "No hospitals." The steel in his voice left no room for argument. "Marcus, take us home." "Sir, shouldn't we drop the lady off first?" No, his eyes never left mine. "I think Mrs. Parker and I have more to discuss." The way he said my married name made my stomach twist with fresh fear. This wasn't random. This man, whoever he was, had been expecting me, or someone like me. The car glided through the storm, the sound of rain and tires hissing on wet asphalt filling the silence between us. I sat frozen in the back seat, my heart pounding so loudly it nearly drowned out the rhythmic swish of the windshield wipers. We drove for what felt like hours, though it could not have been more than 20 minutes. The city lights blurred into streaks of gold and blue through the rain-soaked windows. My mind spun with fear and disbelief. Who was this man who knew my namey husband's name and yet refused to explain? When the car finally slowed, I saw the outline of iron gates looming ahead. Cameras tracked our approach as Marcus entered a code. The gates opened soundlessly, revealing a long driveway flanked by manicured gardens and marble statues glistening under the storm's fury. The sedan rolled to a stop before a mansion that looked like it had been lifted straight from a Renaissance painting, massive, elegant, and utterly intimidating. "Where are we going?" I managed to whisper. "Somewhere safe," the man replied calmly. "Somewhere we can continue this conversation without interruption. I need to get home. David will be worried." He turned toward me then, his pale eyes illuminated by the faint glow of the dashboard. The corners of his mouth curved into something that wasn't quite a smile, more a predator's amusement. "I doubt that very much. But don't worry, Isabella. You're under my protection now." The words sent a shiver down my spine, not of fear, but of something darker, more dangerous. The car stopped beneath an arched portico. Marcus hurried out to open the door. I stepped into a world so far removed from mine it felt like stepping into a dream or a trap. The mansion's entrance hall was vast enough to swallow my entire apartment. Renaissance paintings adorned the walls, their colors glowing under the soft amber light of crystal chandeliers. The marble floor was polished to a mirror shine, reflecting the flicker of a roaring fireplace at the far end. The scent of orchids perfumed the air, faint and expensive. I stood dripping water onto the marble, feeling small and wildly out of place. My soaked scrubs clung to my skin. My hair dripped onto the floor like evidence I didn't belong here. "Isabella, please sit down." His voice came from behind me, smooth and commanding. I turned to see him moving slowly but deliberately toward an ornate chair near the fireplace. In the better light, his pallor was stark, his shirt now crimson at the side, blood soaking through the white fabric. "You need medical attention," I said automatically, my training taking over. "That wound is still bleeding." "I'm aware," he replied, lowering himself into the chair with the kind of grace that didn't quite mask his discomfort. "But first, we need to address your situation." "My situation," I echoed, incredulous, "is that I'm soaking wet in a stranger's house. I should call a taxi." "With what phone?" His tone carried the faintest trace of amusement. "And I'm hardly a stranger anymore. Allow me to properly introduce myself." He straightened slightly, every movement controlled, deliberate. "Lorenzo Valente." The name meant nothing to me, but the way he said it made my skin prickle. There was weight behind those syllables, a kind of dark reverence and fear. "Mr. Valente," I began carefully, "I appreciate you helping me escape the storm, but I really need to go home." "To David?" he asked, and something sharp gleamed behind his calm expression. "The man who abandoned you in a parking garage during the worst storm of the season?" Heat rushed to my cheeks. "My marriage isn't perfect, but that doesn't give you the right to—" "Rosa!" he called out suddenly. Almost instantly, a woman appeared in the doorway. She was perhaps 60, her silver-streaked hair pulled into an elegant chignon. Her posture radiated the kind of authority that comes from running a household with absolute precision. "Yes, Mr. Valente? Please prepare the blue suite for Mrs. Parker. She'll be staying with us tonight." "I will not." I stood abruptly, water dripping from my hair onto the polished floor. "I don't know what kind of man you are, but I'm not spending the night in a stranger's house." Rosa glanced discreetly between us, waiting for instruction. Lorenzo's gaze held mine, calm but unyielding. "What kind of man do you think I am, Isabella?" I swallowed. "I think you're the kind of man who knows too much about people he's just met." He smiled faintly. "Fair enough." Then, moving with slow deliberation, he reached into his jacket. I tensed until he withdrew a sleek phone and began typing with swift efficiency. His voice was quiet when he spoke again. "Your full name is Isabella Marie Parker, née Richardson. You're 28 years old, born in Portland, Oregon. Your parents died in a house fire when you were 19, leaving you with substantial medical debt that you're still paying off." My stomach turned to ice. "How could you possibly know that?" He didn't pause. "You graduated summa cum laude from Oregon Health Sciences University with a bachelor's in nursing. Specialized in pediatric care because you wanted to protect children the way no one protected you after your father walked out when you were 7. Stop." My voice came out as a whisper, my throat tight. But he wasn't finished. "You married David Parker 3 years ago. He works construction when he can find steady employment, but he has a gambling problem that's gotten progressively worse. Currently, he owes approximately $47,000 to various bookmakers and loan sharks." The room seemed to spin. "That's impossible. David doesn't gamble that much." Doesn't he? Lorenzo set his phone aside, his eyes like ice. When was the last time you saw your joint bank account, Isabella? I opened my mouth then closed it again. I couldn't remember. David handled everything: bills, payments, budgets. He'd always said it was easier that way. He'd told me to trust him. And I had. You investigated me, I said, my voice trembling with both anger and fear. Why? I investigate everyone who enters my world, he replied evenly. And whether you realize it or not, you entered my world the moment you got into that car. I made a mistake, I protested. I thought you were my Uber driver. There are no mistakes in my line of work, only opportunities and consequences. He gestured to Rosa, who had waited silently in the doorway. The blue suite, please. And ask Marcus to bring Mrs. Parker's belongings from the car. I don't have any belongings, I said quickly. Just my purse and the bag in the back seat, the one I brought from the hospital. Your medical kit. I blinked. How did you? You really do need medical attention, I said, trying to regain control of the situation, gesturing to his wound. Let me help you. He regarded me with faint curiosity. Why? Because you're bleeding. You don't know me. For all you know, I could be dangerous. Are you? I asked quietly. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Very. Then why help me at all? I challenged softly. Why not just drop me off somewhere and continue whatever you were doing? His answer came like a verdict. Because, Isabella Parker, your husband's debts have made you a person of interest to some very unforgiving people. Whether you know it or not, you're already in danger. The words hit me like a blow to the chest. What kind of danger? Lorenzo leaned forward, the firelight flickering across his face. His voice was calm, but beneath it ran the unmistakable undercurrent of threat. The kind that doesn't ask politely for repayment. The kind that uses family members to encourage prompt payment. You're trying to scare me, I whispered. I'm trying to save your life. His tone dropped to a murmur. Your husband borrowed money from men who consider breaking kneecaps a reasonable collection method. You think they won't use a pretty nurse to motivate him? My legs went weak and I sank into the nearest chair. The pieces began to fit together: the late nights, the secret calls, the missing money. How much does he really owe? More than he can pay, Lorenzo said quietly. More than he'll ever be able to pay without help. And you're offering to help? He inclined his head slightly. I'm offering you protection. I stared at him. Protection isn't free, is it? He extended his hand toward me, his eyes steady. Protection isn't free, Isabella. But I promise you the price I'm asking is far more reasonable than what David's creditors will demand. For a long moment, the only sound was the crackle of the fire and the storm raging beyond the windows, and then against every instinct screaming at me to run, I placed my trembling hand in his. His fingers closed around mine with surprising gentleness. Rosa will show you to your room after we're finished. You're safe here. Safe. The word felt foreign, fragile. Something I hadn't felt since childhood. And for the first time in years, I almost believed it might be true. The blue suite Rosa prepared for me was larger than the apartment David and I shared. Egyptian cotton sheets draped a king-sized bed that could have easily slept 4 people. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked gardens that seemed impossibly beautiful, even under winter's icy breath, and the adjoining marble bathroom. I found amenities I'd only seen in luxury magazines, and a walk-in closet filled with clothes that fit me perfectly: silk blouses, cashmere sweaters, designer jeans. Everything arranged with precision, like someone had been expecting me. I ran my fingers along the fabrics, still damp from the rain, and felt a chill crawl up my spine. How could Lorenzo Valente possibly know my exact size? How long had he been watching me? Hours earlier I'd helped him. Against all reason, I'd cleaned and sutured the bullet wound that had stained his pristine shirt red. The bullet had passed cleanly through his side, missing vital organs by inches. He had endured the entire procedure in stoic silence, his pale eyes fixed on me the whole time. "You have steady hands," he'd said as I tied the final stitch. "I work with children," I replied. "Steady hands are a requirement. And yet you're trembling." He'd been right. Not from the medical work but from something else entirely. Fear. Tension. Or maybe the growing awareness that this man, wounded and powerful, saw me more clearly than my husband ever had now, standing alone in this opulent room, dressed in dry clothes Rosa had laid out. I tried to steady my breathing, but my thoughts kept circling back to the life I'd left behind only hours ago, the small apartment, the arguments, the exhaustion. My phone, a new one provided by Lorenzo's people after mine died, buzzed on the bedside table. The screen flashed a name that twisted my stomach into knots. David. For a moment I considered ignoring it. Then I answered. "Hello. Where the hell are you?" His voice was sharp with panic and anger. "I came home and you weren't here. Your phone's been dead all night." "My phone died," I said quietly. "I'm staying somewhere safe tonight." "Safe? What's that supposed to mean?" "Safe from what?" "Safe from you," I wanted to say, but the words came out before I could stop them. "Safe from arguments. From ultimatums. From being told I'm never enough." There was a pause, the kind that stretched into silence heavy with guilt and denial. "Isabella, come home. We can talk about this." "Can we?" My voice broke despite myself. "Or will you just tell me again that my job doesn't matter? That saving children's lives is less important than making babies?" He was quiet for a moment, and when he spoke again, his tone had softened into that familiar, pleading desperation I'd once mistaken for love. "I got a new job offer today. Good money. We could afford to have Kidsto buy a house." "What kind of job pays that well without experience or education?" I asked, suspicion rising. "It's legitimate, Isabella. I promise." "Like your gambling is legitimate? Like those phone calls you take in the other room?" "I don't know what you're talking about." The lie came so easily it made my stomach turn. How many times had I heard that same tone, those same words, and believed them simply because believing was easier? "I can't do this anymore, David," I said, my voice trembling with a strange mix of grief and strength. "I can't keep pretending everything is fine when it's not. Where are you staying? I'll come get you." No, the word came out sharper than I intended. "I need time to think." "Think about what?" "We're married, Isabella. You can't just disappear." "You left me in a parking garage during a storm," I said softly. "If anyone disappeared first, it was you." Before he could reply, I ended the call. My hands were shaking not from fear, but from the adrenaline of finally standing up for myself. For the first time in years, I hadn't apologized. I hadn't backed down. A soft knock on the door startled me. "Come in." Lorenzo entered, moving more easily now that his wound had been treated. He wore dark jeans and a black sweater that molded to his frame, emphasizing the breadth of his shoulders. In the warm light, his presence filled the room calm, controlled, quietly dangerous. "How are you feeling?" I asked, noting the color returning to his face. "Better. Thank you." His eyes swept over me, lingering a moment longer than propriety allowed. "The clothing suits you. How did you know my size?" I asked cautiously. A faint smile curved his lips. "I have excellent judgment when it comes to measurements." The air between us shifted, charged, intimate. I looked away first. "My husband called." It wasn't a question, Lorenzo said quietly. He wants you to come home. I nodded. I told him I needed time to think. Lorenzo stepped closer. His cologne cedar leather, something darker beneath, wrapped around me like smoke. What are you thinking about, Isabella? Whether my marriage was already over before tonight, or if I just finally admitted it to myself. He studied me in silence for a long moment before speaking, his voice low, steady, and strangely tender. Marriage should be a partnership, protection, loyalty, shared burdens, not abandonment when things become difficult. I looked up, meeting his pale eyes. Speaking from experience? Something flickered there, pain, maybe regret. My parents were married for 30 years before they died. Even when my father's business put our family at risk, they faced it together. That's what love looks like, Isabella. Not what you have with David. Your father's business? I asked carefully. What kind of business? His expression grew distant, voice flattening into memory. The kind that requires careful planning and absolute loyalty. They were killed when I was 15, a car bomb meant for my father. But they were together that night. Always together. The pain in his tone was raw, unguarded. It made my chest ache. I'm sorry, I whispered. That he looked at me then, truly looked, and for the first time, I saw not the calculated control of a crime lord, but the boy who had survived the fire of loss and turned it into empire. I built everything I have now from nothing, he said quietly. Every dollar, every alliance, every moment of safety I've created came from understanding one truth: family is the only thing that matters in this world. And that's what you do, I murmured. You build safety. His smile was slow, sharp as glass. I build empires, Isabella. Safety is just a side effect. The words should have frightened me. They didn't. I crossed my arms, trying to steady my heartbeat. The gates outside, are they locked? For your protection. Am I a prisoner? He moved closer, close enough that I could feel the warmth radiating from his body. You're a guest who's in danger. There's a difference. But I won't lie to you. Isabella, leaving right now would be extremely unwise. The admission should have scared me. Instead, heat pooled low in my stomach. This man who terrified me, who commanded power like gravity, was offering me something I hadn't felt in years: shelter, not control. What happens tomorrow? I asked quietly. He hesitated, his gaze softening. Tomorrow we discuss your future. Tonight you rest in safety for the first time in months. I didn't answer. Couldn't. Because he was right. I couldn't remember the last time I'd fallen asleep without worry about money, about David's moods, about whether I was enough. Thank you, I whispered. Lorenzo reached out, his thumb brushing lightly along my cheekbone, gentle, reverent. Sleep well, Isabella. Tomorrow everything changes. The first rays of dawn crept through the curtains when the knock came, soft, deliberate. I opened my eyes to find Rosa standing in the doorway, holding a silver tray with breakfast and a folded note resting beside the coffee cup. From Mr. Valente, she said with her usual composure before leaving silently. The note was written in elegant handwriting. We need to talk. L. By the time I found him in the study, Lorenzo was no longer the pale man bleeding through his shirt from the night before. Dressed in a charcoal suit, he looked like power carved into human form every inch, the man whose name whispered through the city like a prayer and a warning. He stood by the window, the light catching the sharp planes of his face as he turned toward me. Good morning, Isabella. I trust you slept well. Better than I should have, I admitted. This feels unreal. Reality is often less kind than dreams. Sit, please. There's something you need to see. He handed me a single photographan image so shocking that my fingers went cold. David, bound to a chair, his face swollen and bloodied. A strip of duct tape covered his mouth, and terror shone in his eyes. Across the bottom, scrawled in red ink, were the words, "Trade the nurse for the husband. 1 hour, or he dies slowly." My knees nearly gave out. Oh my God! David! It arrived 10 minutes ago. Slipped under your door. How could they find me here? Lorenzo's expression hardened. Viktor Petrov. He set the photograph down on the desk. This is his work. My voice trembled. The one David owes money to. Among others. His tone was calm, deadly calm. They've decided to use him to get to you. Use me. I repeated, the words barely making sense. For what? You work at St. Mary's Children's Hospital. You have access to patient records, surgical schedules, information that could be valuable to my enemies. I shook my head, horrified. You think they want me to spy on children's medical files? That's insane. Insane, yes. But not impossible. They would use anyone, Isabella. Especially someone married to a man desperate enough to sell anything, including you. I clutched the edge of the desk to steady myself. Then I have to go. I have to give them what they want or they'll kill him. Lorenzo's reply was immediate, absolute. That's not going to happen. You don't understand, I cried. If I don't go, if you do go, they'll kill you both. The certainty in his voice was terrifying. He stepped closer, his tone low but unyielding. This isn't about money anymore. It's about sending a message. What kind of message? He looked at me then, his pale eyes like cold fire. That no one takes what belongs to me without consequences. The possessive pronoun hit me like a physical blow. I don't belong to you, I whispered. Don't you? His voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. You're wearing my clothes, sleeping in my house, under my protection. You've seen my blood. In my world that creates bonds that don't break easily. I'm married, I said weakly, to another man. A man who gambled away your future and put your life in danger. A man who left you in a storm because you wouldn't give him children you weren't ready for. His words were knives wrapped in silk cutting because they were true. We have to help David, I insisted, forcing steadiness into my voice. Whatever you think of him, he doesn't deserve to die over gambling debts. Lorenzo's eyes softened, but his voice remained cold steel. And what about what you deserve, Isabella? When do you get to choose your own life instead of cleaning up his mistakes? The question struck deep, echoing through every choice I'd made in the past 3 years. When had I stopped living for myself? When had my love turned into an endless series of rescues? I made a choice when I said my vows, I whispered. Vows to a man who breaks every promise he makes, Lorenzo replied, stepping closer. Vows to someone who would trade your safety for his own convenience. You don't know him like I do. I know he's never looked at you the way I am right now. The words hung between us, heavy, forbidden. My breath caught as he reached out, fingertips brushing a strand of hair from my face. The world narrowed to the space between us. Then gunfire shattered the silence. The first shots came from the courtyard. Sharp cracks, followed by the staccato roar of automatic weapons. The windows trembled. Lorenzo's entire demeanor changed, calm turning to lethal focus. He grabbed my arm and pulled me behind his desk. Stay down, he ordered, drawing his gun in one fluid motion. More gunfire echoed through the mansion, closer this time, accompanied by shouting in multiple languages. Russian, Italian, English. They're here, Lorenzo said grimly. Viktor decided not to wait for your answer. What do we do? My voice shook. We survive. He moved toward the far wall, pressed his palm against a wooden panel I hadn't noticed before. It slid open with a quiet hiss, revealing a dark passage beyond. There's a safe room behind the wine cellar. Marcus will. The door exploded inward before he could finish. Wood splintered as armed men in tactical gear flooded the study. Lorenzo spun and fired twice, each shot precise. 2 intruders fell instantly, blood pooling on the marble. I hit the floor, pressing myself flat behind the desk, heart pounding so violently I thought it might stop. This wasn't my world. I saved children in sterile hospital rooms, not fought for my life in gunfights between mob families. The air filled with the acrid tang of gunpowder and blood. Shouts echoed down the hallway. Glass shattered. The chaos was deafening. Isabella! The passage now. Lorenzo's voice cut through the noise like a command from God. I started crawling toward the hidden door, staying low as bullets shattered priceless paintings and tore chunks from the wall above my head. The sound was thunder made of metal. A hand seized my ankle, yanking me backward. I screamed, kicking out wildly. My foot connected with something soft, and a man grunted in pain. I rolled over and came face to face with a hulking figure, a scarred, blond man with cold blue eyes that gleamed with cruelty. "Pretty little nurse," he said in accented English. "Victor has plans for you." Panic surged through me. I clawed at his face, my nails raking across his cheek, drawing blood. He cursed and raised his weapon. The gunshot that followed was deafening. The man's head snapped back, and he crumpled beside me, lifeless. Lorenzo stood over us, smoke rising from his gun barrel, eyes blazing with fury that made him look less like a man and more like an avenging angel. "No one touches what belongs to me." He extended his hand. Without hesitation, I took it. His fingers wrapped around mine, strong and sure, pulling me to my feet. All around us, chaos reigned, gunfire, shouts, death. But in that moment, the only thing I felt was the steady grip of the man who had just saved my life. "Come," he said, guiding me toward the hidden passage. "We have work to do." As we disappeared into the darkness, leaving the blood-soaked study behind, I realized something that should have terrified me. I didn't want to run anymore. In the space of 24 hours, the woman who'd stood crying in the rain had died, and something new had taken her place. The nurse who mended others was gone. What remained was someone willing to fight for her own survival. For the first time in years, I wasn't afraid. The safe room beneath Lorenzo's mansion was unlike anything I'd ever seen, an underground fortress of steel and silence. Reinforced walls and independent air supply, enough food and water for 2 weeks. It felt less like a shelter and more like a tomb for the living. I sat on a leather sofa that probably cost more than my annual salary, shaking, trying to process what had just happened. Upstairs, the world had turned into chaos, gunfire, shouting, the crack of destruction. Down here, the air was thick with quiet. Lorenzo stood in front of a bank of monitors, his pale eyes flickering from screen to screen as he issued rapid orders into a secure phone. Marcus's voice came through the line, calm but tense. "We're holding the south wing. They've retreated to the perimeter." David's face flashed across one of the screens, bloodied, terrified, dragged from a van by armed men before the assault had even begun. He was alive. For now. That should have been my only concern. But it wasn't. Instead, my eyes kept finding Lorenzo, the way he moved with purpose even while bleeding from a reopened wound, the quiet authority that filled the room like gravity itself. When the last call ended, he turned toward me. "Are you hurt?" I shook my head. "No. Just in shock." "That's understandable. You weren't meant to be part of this." "Weren't meant to be?" My voice trembled between fear and fury. "You think that helps? That photo was addressed to me. They know who I am, where I was sleeping. Don't tell me I wasn't meant to be part of this." Lorenzo's expression remained calm, too calm. "You're right. You were a target. But not by chance." The unease in my stomach hardened into anger. "How long have you known?" He studied me for a long moment, then exhaled slowly. "Planning what exactly?" he asked, almost to himself. David's debts. The Russians. Me ending up in your car. None of this is coincidence, is it? He looked at me then, and there was something almost like regret in his eyes. You think I orchestrated your husband's gambling addiction? His tone was mild, curious. No, but I think you manipulated the situation to get what you wanted. Very perceptive. He set his phone aside and gave me his full attention. You're right, though not in the way you imagine. I crossed my arms, heart hammering. Then explain it. He moved closer, the dim light catching the hard line of his jaw. I've been watching David Parker for 6 months. Not because of his debts, but because of his connection to you. The words hit me like a slap. To me. Your husband wasn't just gambling, Isabella. He was laundering money for Viktor Petrov. That's impossible, I whispered. But even as I said it, the puzzle pieces began falling into place. His erratic mood swings, the secret calls, the sudden inflows of cash followed by desperate losses. All those construction jobs paid in cash. The gambling was just cover. I sat heavily, the truth clawing at my chest. He was working for them. Lorenzo nodded slightly. Among others. David was what we call a useful idiot, someone who does criminal work without understanding the larger picture. But useful idiots become liabilities when they start asking questions or getting greedy. And Viktor decided to eliminate him. No. Viktor decided to use him as bait. My stomach twisted. Bait for what? Lorenzo's eyes darkened. For you. Me? Why would anyone want access to me? Because you work at St. Mary's Children's Hospital. Because several of my associates' children receive treatment there. I stared at him, horror dawning. You think they wanted me to spy on sick children? Not spy. Leverage. His voice dropped to a near whisper. Information about when certain patients would be most vulnerable. When security would be lightest. Petrov's people were planning to kidnap those children to get to their fathers. I felt sick. I would never. I know. His tone softened. That's why I intervened. Intervened how? I asked, though part of me already knew. I encouraged David's existing weaknesses. Made sure his losses mounted until Viktor had to act. I needed Petrov to reveal his hand before he could recruit you. I stood, trembling with disbelief and betrayal. You used me as bait. He met my gaze, unflinching. I used you as bait to protect you. My breath caught. You manipulated my entire life. If Viktor had approached you slowly pretending to help with David's debts, would you have refused? The honest answer terrified me. I didn't know that he read it in my silence. 3 months ago, desperate and exhausted, you might have believed him. You've spent 3 years cleaning up David's messes, working double shifts, pretending your marriage wasn't killing you because leaving seemed harder than staying. His words sliced through me with surgical precision, exposing every wound I tried to hide. That doesn't give you the right to play God, I whispered. No, he agreed quietly. But it gave me the responsibility to protect you from people who would have destroyed you without a second thought. By destroying my husband instead? By showing you who he really is before it's too late. He turned back to the monitors. On one screen, Petrov's men were regrouping outside the mansion's gates. Others dragged bodies, weapons flashing under floodlights. The question now, Isabella, is what you want to do with that knowledge. I stared at his back, emotions warring inside me: anger, fear, gratitude. For the first time, I saw clearly the prison my marriage had become. What are my options? I asked. He faced me again, eyes like tempered glass. You can go back. Pretend David is worth saving. Spend the rest of your life wondering when the next crisis will destroy you. Or Or you can accept that some bridges burn completely. Stay here under my protection. We'll build something better from the ashes. The offer hung between us like a blade, sharp, glittering, dangerous. If I took it, I would be stepping into a world from which there was no return. If I refused, I'd return to a life built on lies and debt. I need to know David is safe first, I said finally. Lorenzo inclined his head. We'll get him back. But don't mistake rescue for reconciliation. Some bridges burn completely, and trying to rebuild them only leads to more destruction. The sounds of battle above us had faded. Footsteps echoed faintly through the tunnels. Lorenzo's men securing the estate. Soon we would have to leave this underground haven and face what came next. I thought about David, terrified and broken in Petrov's hands. About the man who had once sworn to protect me and ended up selling me instead. About the woman I had been before all this, trusting, small, afraid to stand alone. When this is over, I said quietly, I want the truth. All of it. No more manipulation. No more protection through lies. And if the truth is uglier than the lies, I met Lorenzo's eyes without flinching. Then at least I'll know what I'm choosing. For the first time since I'd met him, Lorenzo smiled, a small, genuine curve that softened the harsh lines of his face. In that case, Isabella Parker, I think you're going to be very dangerous. The secure communication line buzzed again. Lorenzo glanced at the screen, and his expression hardened instantly. Victor wants to negotiate. My pulse quickened. Negotiate. He's offering to trade David for you. 1 hour. Neutral ground. What are you going to do? Lorenzo's smile turned predatory. I think it's time Victor Petrov learned that nobody takes what belongs to me. The storm had passed, but the air still carried the metallic tang of rain and gunpowder. Lorenzo stood in the control room, his posture rigid, voice low as he spoke into the encrypted phone. We accept the meeting. Same conditions. But tell Victor if he touches her, I'll burn his empire to the ground. When he ended the call, his eyes found mine. There was no trace of the calm strategist anymore, only the man beneath the armor, driven by a mixture of fury and purpose. It's done. We meet in 1 hour. Where? The warehouse district near the docks. Neutral ground. Cameras nowhere, witnesses nowhere. He holstered his gun, the motion smooth and automatic. I'm coming with you, I said. Lorenzo looked at me for a long moment, then shook his head. No. You stay here. You said this is my choice. My husband is the one they're using. I have to be there. His voice dropped into a dangerous whisper. This isn't a rescue mission, Isabella. This is war. I met his gaze steadily. Then I guess it's time I learned what war looks like. A flicker of something, admiration, maybe, crossed his face. He exhaled slowly. Fine. But you stay behind me. If anything happens, Marcus takes you out immediately. Understand? Understood. The drive to the docks was silent. The city lights blurred past the tinted windows, reflections of a life that no longer felt like mine. I watched Lorenzo's reflection in the glass, the tension in his jaw, the quiet rage that lived in the space between his words. He wasn't wearing armor, but he didn't need to. He was armor when the car stopped. The world seemed to narrow to the echo of waves hitting the pier and the hiss of wind against metal. The warehouse loomed ahead, gray, skeletal, reeking of salt and oil. A perfect place for betrayal. Marcus opened the door. We're clear for now, boss. Stay sharp. Lorenzo's tone left no room for doubt inside. The vast emptiness was broken only by the echo of dripping water and the faint hum of industrial lights. And there he was, David, tied to a chair in the center of the room, his face swollen and pale, his shirt soaked in blood and sweat. Victor Petrov stood behind him, tall, broad, eyes like frostbitten steel. His men flanked him on either side, guns drawn but lowered. Ah, Lorenzo Valente, Victor drawled, his Russian accent thick as smoke. Always punctual. And you brought the nurse. How romantic. Lorenzo's expression didn't change. Let him go. You'll get your money. Victor laughed a low, humorless sound. Money? You think this is about money? No. This is about respect. About territory. You crossed into my city. That was your first mistake. And yours, Victor countered, was falling in love with a liability. He nodded toward me. Pretty, yes, but expensive to keep alive. I felt Lorenzo tense beside me. Choose your next words carefully. Victor smirked. I offer you a trade. Her for him. Husband for wife. Seems poetic, doesn't it? The air went still. Even the waves outside seemed to pause. Lorenzo didn't look at me. His voice was quiet, deliberate. Not happening. Victor's grin widened. Then I suppose Mr. Parker will die first. He drew a pistol from his coat and pressed it to David's temple. Stop! I shouted before I could think. Wait. I'll go. Lorenzo turned sharply. No? Isabella, listen to me. But I stepped forward, heart pounding, voice trembling. You said I could choose, Lorenzo. This is my choice. David looked up at me, blood crusted on his lips. Isabella, please, they said they'd kill me. I didn't mean to. Didn't mean to what? I demanded, my voice breaking. Didn't mean to sell my name? My job? To trade me for money? Tears blurred my vision, but I kept my voice steady. How could you? I had no choice, he cried. They would have killed me. So you thought you'd let them kill me instead? He sobbed, words dissolving into incoherence. Victor lowered the gun and smiled coldly. Touching. Such devotion. You see, Valente? This is what loyalty looks like in your world. Lorenzo's face was carved from marble. You mistake desperation for loyalty. The air was electric now, every heartbeat a countdown. Victor gestured lazily. Final offer. The nurse walks to me, the husband walks free. Refuse, and I paint this floor with his blood. Lorenzo didn't move. Neither did I. Then Lorenzo spoke softly, so only I could hear. If you go to him, he'll kill you both. He needs a body to send a message. Don't give him yours. But I couldn't look away from David, the man I had once loved. The man whose betrayal had torn my life apart. His eyes were pleading, pitiful, human. Please, Isabella, help me. And in that moment I saw everything clearly. The debt, the lies, the nights alone. The way he'd left me standing in the rain. He'd already killed something in me long before tonight. I turned to Lorenzo, my voice steady, hollow. David made his choice. Lorenzo's expression didn't change, but I saw understanding flash in his eyes. Victor frowned. What was that? Lorenzo raised his gun. My turn. The first shot rang out like thunder. Then another. Victor staggered backward. Disbelief etched across his face as blood bloomed across his chest. His men shouted, firing wildly. Lorenzo moved like shadow, precise, deadly, untouchable. Within seconds it was over. Bodies fell. Silence followed. Only David remained, still tied to the chair, shaking violently. I walked toward him, my shoes echoing on the concrete floor. Isabella, please, he whispered. Untie me. We can leave. Start over. I stared at him for a long time, my heart as heavy as stone. There's nothing left to start, I said softly behind me. Lorenzo's voice was quiet, final. Leave him. He's not our problem anymore. I turned one last time. David's eyes filled with panic as he realized the truth. Isabella, don't. Please. But I did. I walked away. The echo of his screams followed us out into the night, sharp, desperate, fading beneath the hum of the docks and the roar of the sea. Lorenzo opened the car door for me. For a long moment I just stood there, staring back at the warehouse where my old life was ending. When I finally spoke, my voice was quiet, resolute. He's gone. Yes. And what does that make me now? Lorenzo met my gaze. Free. As the car pulled away, I looked out the window. The water shimmered in the moonlight, black and silver, endless. Somewhere behind us, David Parker's life had ended. But mine had just begun. 3 weeks after the warehouse, the city had changed, and so had I. The newspapers called it a gang war. 7 dead, 2 missing, 1 burned warehouse at the docks. But none of them knew the truth. It wasn't a war. It was a purge. Viktor Petrov was dead. His empire crumbled overnight. And the only witness who could have tied Lorenzo Valente to the killings, David Parker, had vanished into the water with the rest of the evidence. Or so I thought. We'd spent those weeks in silence, rebuilding from the ashes. Lorenzo moved with purpose, always 1 step ahead, tightening alliances, eliminating threats. And May tried to sleep, to forget the sound of gunfire, the sight of David's eyes as I turned away. But forgetting is a privilege the guilty never get. Then, one gray morning, Marcus entered Lorenzo's office holding a tablet. "You need to see this." Lorenzo glanced up. "What is it?" Marcus set the screen on the desk and pressed play. David. Alive, bruised, pale, chained to a chair, a new face behind him. Dmitry Kov, Viktor Petrov's successor. "Mr. Valente," Dmitri's voice drawled through the recording, "I believe you have something that belonged to my predecessor. Information, perhaps. A few offshore accounts. I have what you lost. His name is David Parker. Come find him, or I'll send you his wife's heart in a box instead." My blood went cold. "They're using him to get to me again," I said. "No, Isabella. They're using you to get to me." Lorenzo's eyes darkened. "Kov wants a war. Then end it," I whispered. He met my gaze. "That's exactly what I plan to do." 2 nights later, we were in motion. The plan was simple, brutal, and final. Kov was hiding inside an abandoned medical facility near the outskirts of the city, once a charity hospital, now a ghost of steel, and our OT.IT was poetic in a cruel way. A place once meant for healing would now witness death. Lorenzo gathered his men, laid out the blueprint, the escape routes, the kill zones. When he looked up at me, he hesitated. "You're not coming." "Yes, I am. This isn't your fight." I stared at him, calm and cold. It became my fight the moment they used me to hurt children. The moment David sold me. The moment you decided to save me by turning me into something else. He stepped closer, voice low. "What have I turned you into, Isabella?" I met his eyes without flinching. "Someone who won't hesitate." He studied me a long time, then nodded once. "Then God help anyone standing in your way." The night smelled of disinfectant and rust. I moved through the hospital's shadowed corridors, every creak of the floorboards echoing through my chest like a heartbeat. The ghosts of the past lingered here, children's murals peeling from the walls, empty 4 bags hanging like wilted flowers. And ahead, the faint murmur of voices. Lorenzo's men were taking their positions, silent as predators. I slipped into what had once been a patient recovery room. On the other side of a cracked window, I saw him, David. He was strapped to a hospital bed this time, oxygen tube in his nose, wrists cuffed to the railings. His face was thinner, his skin waxy under the harsh fluorescent light. Beside him, Dmitry Kov sat in a leather chair, casually lighting a cigarette. "You said he was loyal," Dmitry was telling someone. "But loyalty is a myth. Everyone breaks when you pull the right string." He exhaled a cloud of smoke. "Bring her in alive." I want Valente to watch her die slow. My pulse slowed. My breathing steadied. It was strange how calm I felt. I opened my medical bag. The same one I'd used for years at the hospital. The same one I'd used to save lives. Tonight it would do the opposite. Inside was a syringe preloaded with potassium chloride. Quick, clean, painless. A nurse's mercy. When the guards left the room, I slipped in through the side door. David's eyes fluttered open. For a moment he didn't seem to recognize me. Then he whispered, "Isabella." "Yes," I said softly. "It's me. You came for me." "I did." Relief flooded his features. "Thank God, get me out of here. Please. I'll tell you everything." Don't," I said gently. "You don't need to explain." He smiled weakly. "I knew you still loved me." My hand didn't tremble as I filled the syringe. "What are you doing?" he asked, eyes darting toward the needle. "I'm making sure you don't suffer anymore," I whispered. "Isabellano, please?" "Sure," I murmured, pressing my fingers against his wrist, finding the vein I'd memorized long ago. "It won't hurt. You'll just feel sleepy." He struggled weakly against the restraints. "Please, I can change," but I'd heard those words too many times before. The plunger depressed with a soft click. His body went still. Within seconds his eyes glazed over, his breathing slowed, then stopped. A nurse's precision. A wife's justice. "Good night, David." The door burst open a moment later. Dimitri's men stormed in, but it was too late. Gunfire erupted down the hall. Lorenzo's voice roared through the chaos. "Clear the east wing." I ducked as bullets tore through the wall. Glass shattered. The hospital became an inferno of light and noise. When the smoke cleared, Dimitrikov was on the floor, blood seeping through his white shirt, Lorenzo's pistol aimed steady between his eyes. "Business concluded," Lorenzo said coldly, pulling the trigger. Silence followed. Only the faint buzz of flickering lights remained. I stepped into the hallway, my scrubs stained, my gloves trembling as I pulled them off. Lorenzo turned toward me, reading the truth in my face. "He's dead." "Yes." "How?" "The way I know best." For a moment he said nothing. Then he holstered his gun and crossed the distance between us. "You did what had to be done," he murmured. "Justice served." I met his gaze, my voice flat but steady. "It doesn't feel like justice." "It will. In time." Outside, dawn was breaking, pale gold bleeding through the shattered windows. The city stretched awake below us, unaware of the blood that had been spilled to buy its peace. Lorenzo took my hand, his thumb brushing over my wrist, right where the needle had entered David's vein. "From now on, you don't answer to anyone. Not Petrov. Not David. Not even me." I looked at him, exhaustion and clarity settling like dust after a storm. "Then who am I?" He smiled faintly. "Whoever you choose to be." As we walked out of the ruined hospital, I realized that the woman who had once saved lives for a living had crossed a line she could never return from. The nurse had learned to kill, and she wasn't sorry. 6 months after David's death, I stood in the marble bathroom of Lorenzo's penthouse, staring at 2 pink lines on a pregnancy test that would change everything. My hands trembled as I set the plastic stick down on the counter. Outside, the city stretched beneath the glass walls. Our kingdom, conquered and rebuilt. Lorenzo's empire had doubled since the night we took down Dimitrikov. The Russians were gone. Their territories absorbed or erased. The Valente name had become legend, spoken with equal parts reverence and fear. And me? I had become something else entirely. The woman who once cried in a hospital parking lot no longer existed. The nurse who believed in redemption had been buried with David Parker. In her place stood Isabella Valente. Behind me, I heard his voice, warm, deep, unmistakable. "Rosa wants to know if you have any preference for dinner tonight." Our wedding had been 3 months ago, but I still hadn't grown used to the sound of my new name. The ceremony had been an Italian event fit for royalty. A cathedral full of white roses, candlelight reflected in stained glass, music swelling as I walked toward him. My gown had been custom-made, diamonds catching every flicker of light. But none of it compared to the moment Lorenzo took my hand and introduced me to the world as La Regina, the queen that I turned now, meeting his reflection in the mirror. He stood in the doorway, dark slacks, black shirt, sleeves rolled to his forearms, the faintest smile on his lips. His gaze fell to the test on the counter. For a heartbeat, neither of us spoke. Then his voice came low, almost reverent. "Isabella, are you?" "Yes," I whispered. "We're having a baby." Lorenzo crossed the room in 2 strides, pulling me into his arms. I felt the tremor that ran through his body as he pressed his face into my hair. "Since the night I found you in my car, I've been ready for this," he said, voice rough with emotion. That I looked up at him, eyes wet with disbelief. "You have." He smiled a rare, unguarded smile that turned his face from stone to sunlight. "I knew you were different. Special. The kind of woman who could stand beside me, not behind me. The kind of woman who could give me children worth building an empire for." Tears blurred my vision. "And if those children ask about us, show we met, what we do?" He brushed his thumb across my cheekbone. "We'll tell them the truth. That sometimes the world is dangerous, and protecting the people you love requires difficult choices. They'll know what we are. But more importantly, they'll know they are loved beyond measure." The certainty in his voice soothed something deep inside me that had never stopped trembling. This wasn't the life I'd imagined. It was better. It was real. 2 years later, I stood in the nursery of our Estetian expanse of marble, gardens, and high walls built for safety and legacy outside. The afternoon sun fell softly over manicured lawns and the laughter of children in my arms. Our 6-month-old son, Marco, cooed softly as he reached for a strand of my hair. Across the room, our 15-month-old daughter, Lucia, took her first unsteady steps across the plush carpet. Lucia had Lorenzo's pale eyes and my stubborn chin. Marco had my skin tone but his father's quiet intensity. Both were perfect. Both were ours. Lorenzo appeared in the doorway, still in his suit, tie loosened, sleeves rolled. Even after years of power, he looked at me as though I were still the woman who'd stepped, soaked and broken, into his car. "How was your day?" I asked, smiling as I handed him Marco. "Productive." He sat in the rocking chair, cradling our son with practiced gentleness. "We acquired controlling interest in another pharmaceutical company, and the city council approved our proposal for the new children's wing." I laughed softly. "You never stop building, do you?" He looked up, that dangerous softness returning to his expression. "Not when it's for them. Or for you." I picked up Lucia as she reached for me, babbling a mix of English and Italian. "Lucia took 4 steps today." 4. He smiled, pride lighting his face. "Our daughter will outrun us both before she turns 2. We laughed. For a moment, the house felt like a sanctuary untouched by the world outside. Then his tone shifted, quieter. "Dimitrikov was arrested this morning. Federal trafficking charges. He'll spend the rest of his life in prison." I froze, absorbing the words. "Good. You don't feel guilty?" "No," I said simply. "He ordered the murder of children. His prison is mercy compared to what he gave others." Lorenzo nodded once. "The last of Victor's men are gone. It's over." I looked at our children, then back at him. "Then the city is finally safe. As safe as it can be when ruled by a Valente." He rose from the chair, Marco in his arms, and crossed to me. "Do you ever regret it, Isabella? Any of it?" I thought of the rain-soaked night that had brought me to him, the hospital, David's betrayal, the blood, the rebirth. I regret nothing, I said. The woman who married David Parker wanted safety at any cost. The woman who chose you wanted something worth fighting for. He smiled, eyes glimmering like frost in sunlight. And what was that? I looked around at the home, our children, the life we had carved from violence and loss. Everything we have right now. He cupped my face, thumb tracing the familiar line of my cheekbone. I love you, Isabella Valente. And I love you, I whispered, more than I ever loved the woman I used to be. That night, after the children were asleep and the house fell silent, I stood once more by the window overlooking the city we had shaped. Lorenzo's arms wrapped around me from behind, his hands resting gently over my stomach, flat now, but soon it wouldn't be that. He pressed his lips to my hair. What are you thinking about? That storm, I said softly. The night everything changed. Do you wish it had never happened? I leaned back against him, smiling faintly. I wish it had happened sooner. His laughter was low, genuine. Bloodthirsty queen. I turned in his arms, eyes meeting his. You're bloodthirsty queen. Forever. Forever. I echoed that. He kissed Meslo, deep, claiming an eternal. Outside, rain began to fall again. But this time it wasn't the punishing storm that had once left me shivering in despair. It was soft, cleansing, a baptism for the life we had built. The woman left crying in a parking garage was gone forever. In her place stood Isabella Valente, queen of an empire built on loyalty and love, mother to children who would never know abandonment or betrayal. I was exactly where I belonged. And I would never let anyone take it from me again. Which moment in this story made your heartacre believe in love again? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more passionate, emotional stories from Desire Tales.